Hey everyone, Dan with Mac Rumors, and in this video I have the brand new iPhone XR a few days before the official October 26th release date, and in this video I'm going to unbox it and share my overall first impressions of Apple's newest flagship device. The unboxing experience for the XR is really no different than the other recent iPhone unboxings. You get your lightning cable, wall adapter, and earpods alongside some paperwork, and just like the iPhone XS and XS Max packaging, the lightning to 3.5mm adapter is not included. I have the iPhone XR in black, which looks good but is a bit boring considering that one of the main draws of the iPhone XR is that it also comes in 5 other colors like white, yellow, coral, blue, and product red. I really like how the colors carry over from the glass back all the way through the aluminum frame. Which brings me to another major difference of the XR, and that's the aluminum frame versus the stainless steel frame on the iPhone XS. It's honestly not that big of a deal, it just feels like a pre-iPhone X era smartphone. It's still premium feeling, and on the plus side it won't be as prone to scratches as the stainless steel versions. The form factor of the iPhone XR is interesting. It's a little bit bigger than the XS and obviously smaller than the XS Max. If you go back to the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, you're getting significantly more screen real estate in a form factor that's also right in the middle of these two phones. The iPhone XR has a 6.1-inch LCD Liquid Retina display that Apple claims is the most advanced LCD display in the industry, but there's been a lot of heat about the XR's resolution and how it's basically a 720p display with a screen size that large, the PPI is going to be awful, etc, etc. Now display quality is something that's pretty important to me personally, especially when testing out the new iPhone XS Max and other super sharp OLED displays like on the Pixel 3 XL and the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, etc. Obviously, when you compare it directly to the iPhone XS Max's OLED display, you will notice a pretty big difference. But when I first unboxed the device and truly stared at it for the first time, I was honestly pleasantly surprised. It's completely fine. It wasn't something that really stuck out or was an instant deal breaker. It actually looks like a pretty good display given the specs and the circumstances. What does stand out a bit, especially if you're coming from a 10, XS, or XS Max, is the increased bezel around the display. Now it's not that bad when you look at the XR by itself, but it is a pretty substantial increase in bezel compared to the other higher end iPhones. Again, not that big of a deal, but something that is necessary in order to make the LCD display work and help reduce the overall cost of the XR. Overall, I personally like this form factor. I'm someone who preferred the iPhone XS's 5.8-inch form factor, but wanted a larger display in the iPhone XS Max, so this 6.1-inch size is the perfect compromise. One more side note on the display, Apple also removed 3D Touch and instead replaced it with something called Haptic Touch, which is basically like long pressing and feeling haptic feedback as a response to the long press. It's not that much different, but it does have some limitations at launch. For example, you won't be able to get into any of the quick shortcuts by 3D touching the app. Instead, if you long press on the iPhone XR, it's actually just going to bring up the ability to rearrange your home screen icons or delete an app. Another difference with the iPhone XR is the single lens camera on the back compared to the dual lens setup that's featured on the XS or XS Max. It is the same 12 megapixel wide angle camera that is on the iPhone XS, and it can still take portrait mode photos with the help of software instead of a secondary lens. This is very similar to that of the Pixel 3 and 3 XL, with the XR using processing and advanced algorithms to create these photos. I'll have a full camera comparison to other devices in the next few days, but my first impressions of the camera have been overall fairly positive. You still get the new Smart HDR feature found in the XS, and there's not a huge difference in overall image quality. It's a bit more hit and miss in terms of how the Smart HDR handles highlights and whether or not they get blown out in the background. Even portrait mode looks really impressive so far. There is one thing to note about portrait mode, however, and that is you can actually only take portraits of people. With the iPhone XS Max, portrait mode works on objects and isn't limited to just people, but because the XR doesn't have 2 cameras, it actually needs to detect a face to do the background blurring. The edge detection can be a bit iffy on the iPhone XR, but overall I was very impressed with how it handled everything. And yes, you can actually go back in and edit the photos bokeh, just like you can on the iPhone XS and XS Max portrait mode. You do also get portrait mode for the front-facing camera too. In fact, the TrueDepth camera system is present within the notch, giving you full access to features like Face ID, Animoji, and Memoji, just like on the iPhone XS. In fact, that's pretty much the overall theme of my first impressions. This is a very similar phone with very few limitations that likely aren't a big deal for the average consumer. The iPhone XR starts at $749, which is $250 cheaper than the starting price for the iPhone XS and $350 cheaper than the entry-level XS Max. For that price, you still get a lot of the same major features like Face ID, the A12 Bionic chip, wireless charging, Animoji and Memoji, stereo speakers, portrait mode, 4K video recording, near edge-to-edge display, and much, much more. If you're thinking of upgrading to a new iPhone and you don't need a high-resolution OLED display, then honestly, I'm thinking the XR is the way you should go. Let us know your thoughts on the iPhone XR, and if you're planning on picking one up, which color you're going to go with in the comment section down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.